Tower of London. May tented. Etienne Wu by Saint-Gelot. The spring morning fog rolled thick off the Thames as Anne Boleyn was arrested at Greenwich Palace and brought by barge to the Tower, the same fortress where she had prepared for her coronation just 3 years earlier. She entered through the Watergate, now called Traitor's Gate, and was escorted to the Queen's lodgings in the southwest corner of the fortress complex. She would not leave these rooms alive. What followed was not swift justice, but calculated psychological destruction, 17 days of imprisonment, designed to break her mind before the sword touched her neck. Anne was 35 years old, Queen of England, mother to Princess Elizabeth, who was 2 years and 8 months old. She had been Henry VIII's obsession for 7 years. The woman for whom he had broken with Rome and torn apart the Catholic Church in England. But she had committed the unforgivable crime in Tudor monarchy. She had failed to provide a surviving male heir. Her miscarriage in January 1536 sealed her fate. By May, Thomas Cromwell, Henry's chief minister, had manufactured charges so implausible they would collapse under any scrutiny. Adultery with 5 men, including a court musician. Conspiracy to murder the king. And most grotesque of all, incest with her own brother George Boleyn. The charges were fabricated, extracted through coerced testimony and strategic interrogation of servants who understood that cooperation meant survival, while resistance meant joining their mistress on the scaffold. But truth was irrelevant when power controlled the narrative. Anne's imprisonment followed protocols designed to maximize psychological torment. She was held in the Queen's lodgings' luxurious rooms that mocked her with memories of her coronation preparations in May 1533. The same tapestries hung on the walls. The same view overlooked Tower Green, where the scaffold would be built. She was attended by 4 ladies in waiting. But these were not friends. They were observers, reporting her every word and gesture back to Cromwell and the king. Sleep was systematically disrupted. Guards changed shifts with deliberate noise outside her door. She could hear the construction of the scaffold, beginning on Tower Green below her windows, the hammering of wood, the testing of the platform's stability. Each sound was a countdown she could not escape. And worst of all was the uncertainty. Her execution date was announced, then postponed, announced again, then delayed. This was not administrative confusion, it was calculated torture refined through generations of Tudor statecraft. The trial was predetermined theater. On May 12th, Etienne Wu by Saint-Gelot. The 5 alleged co-conspirators were tried at Westminster Hall, all found guilty within hours, despite evidence so flimsy that modern legal scholars struggle to identify any legitimate grounds for conviction. William Brereton, Henry Norris, Francis Weston, Mark Smeaton, the court musician, and Sir Richard Page were condemned to death. But the most devastating blow came May 15, when Anne's own brother, George Boleyn, Viscount Rochford, was tried on charges of incest with his sister. The evidence consisted entirely of Anne allegedly telling him that Henry was impotent, twisted into proof of unnatural intimacy. George was convicted within hours. Anne herself faced trial the same day. May 15. Before a jury of 27 peers presided over by her own uncle, Thomas Howard, Duke of Norfolk, who had no choice but to condemn his niece or risk his own family's destruction. The verdict was delivered before sunset, guilty on all charges. The sentence, burning at the stake or beheading at the king's pleasure. Henry, in what was framed as mercy, chose the sword. But mercy had nothing to do with it. By importing a skilled swordsman from Calais rather than using the traditional English axe, Henry transformed Anne's execution into theatrical spectacle, a performance engineered for precision and psychological dominance. On May 17, Etienne Wubai Saint-Charlot, 2 days before Anne's scheduled execution, the 5 men were taken to Tower Hill and executed. George Boleyn died first among them, beheaded by the traditional English axe, which required 3 blows to sever his head completely. Anne heard the tower's bells toll that morning from her chambers. She knew what the bells meant. Her brother was dead. The men whose supposed adultery with her had justified the charges were dead. She was alone. And the execution of her co-conspirators before her own death served a crucial function. It established proof of guilt before she could make any final statement. Any protest she made on the scaffold could now be dismissed as the denial of a convicted conspirator. This sequencing was deliberate. It eliminated the possibility of contradiction. The psychological machinery of state power was functioning exactly as designed. The night of May 18 to 19, Etienne Wubai Saint-Charlot. Anne Boleyn did not sleep. Tower records preserved in the Chapel Royal Archives document that at 2:00 a.m. on May 19, she requested the sacrament from her chaplain. She spent the remaining hours before dawn kneeling in prayer in her chambers. The May darkness slowly giving way to the pale spring light that would illuminate her final morning. By dawn, she had been awake for over 24 hours. Her body was exhausted. Her mind had fractured between desperate hope for reprieve and terrible certainty that none would come. Contemporary accounts by witnesses describe Anne as displaying an almost supernatural calm that morning. She laughed with her ladies in waiting. She joked that she would be known as Queen Anne Lackhead. Modern psychology recognizes this response immediately: dissociation. A defense mechanism triggered by extreme trauma. When the mind no longer believes survival is possible, it detaches. What appeared to observers as courage or even cheerfulness was actually emotional collapse, the mind's last shield against unbearable reality. At approximately 8:00 a.m., Sir William Kingston, Constable of the Tower, arrived at the Queen's lodgings to inform Anne that the hour had come. The execution had been scheduled for dawn, but delayed to allow a larger audience of nobles and officials to gather. The scaffold had been erected on Tower Green rather than the public execution site of Tower Hill, a deliberate choice that kept Anne's death semi-private, witnessed only by select courtiers and Tower officials. This was not mercy, but control. A public execution on Tower Hill might have generated sympathy. A controlled execution on Tower Green before a carefully selected audience ensured the correct narrative would be reported. Anne was led from her chambers through the tower's inner courtyards. She wore a gray damask gown trimmed with fur and a red kirtle beneath the red, symbolizing martyrdom. Her only remaining act of subtle defiance? Her dark hair, which Henry had once been obsessed with, was pinned up beneath a white linen cap to expose her neck, clearly for the swordsman. Around her neck she wore a simple pearl necklace, the small throat that had so many jewels. As the poet Thomas Wyatt would later write, Wyatt was imprisoned in the bell tower and forced to witness the execution from his window, one of many courtiers made to watch as warning of what happened to those who fell from royal favor. The scaffold on Tower Green stood approximately 90 centimeters high, unusually low compared to the elevated platforms typically used for public executions. This design was deliberate. It denied Anne's symbolic elevation, kept her face level with the assembled witnesses, forced her to climb only shallow steps. The platform was roughly 4 meters square, covered with straw to absorb blood. No traditional execution block was present. Anne would kneel upright for the French method of beheading, which required the executioner to strike horizontally rather than the English downward chop with an axe. Approximately 1,000 witnesses had gathered: nobles, Tower officials, representatives of foreign ambassadors, all carefully selected to ensure the proper message would spread through their reports. Among them stood Charles Brandon, Duke of Suffolk and Henry VIII's closest friend, serving as official witness to confirm the execution to the king. The atmosphere was not solemn silence, as popular depictions suggest. Contemporary accounts describe a carnival-like tension, witnesses jostling for better views, conversations about whether the foreign swordsman would perform cleanly, speculation about how Anne would comport herself in her final moments. Before kneeling, Anne was permitted a final speech, not out of mercy, but because Tudor custom required it. She stood at the scaffold's edge and addressed the crowd in a clear, controlled voice. "Good Christian people, I am come hither to die, for according to the law, and by the law, I am judged to die, and therefore I will speak nothing against it. I am come hither to accuse no man, nor to speak anything of that, whereof I am accused and condemned to die. But I pray God save the king, and send him long to reign over you. For a gentler nor a more merciful prince was there never, and to me he was ever a good, a gentle and sovereign lord." Every word was calculated. She acknowledged the law without admitting guilt, praised Henry to protect her daughter Elizabeth from further persecution, and subtly exposed the illegitimacy of the charges through what she did not say. This apparent submission was her final act of defiance. She would die obedient but unconfessed. After her speech, Anne removed her pearl necklace